Hello, 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 hello. Hi there, and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Shania. Shania. And on this channel, you'll find loads of sewing tutorials. Some of the tutorials are of things that I've made from scratch to finish, and other tutorials feature garments that have been chopped and screwed to create something new. So if you're into that sort of thing, you should definitely consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I'm so excited about today's video. Not only am I excited about this video because it's part 2 of this tutorial where I show you how to make this super cute puff sleeve top, but I'm also very excited about it because it is in collaboration with Yellow Canary. Yellow Canary is a statement jewelry brand owned by Tangi, and it features different handmade statement pieces such as earrings, waist beads, hair accessories, etc. You need to go over to her website and check out the phenomenal pieces that she makes. She also is on Instagram and she's on TikTok, and she often shows you her process for how she makes her pieces, which is super interesting and super creative. Like, what more can I say? She's amazing. Stick around to the end of this tutorial. I'll be showing you the 3 pieces that she sent me and how I styled them with this super cute top that we will be making today. One other thing I want to mention before we get into the tutorial is that this part of the tutorial is a bit more advanced. I know that my tutorials are usually super detailed, super defined, nitty-gritty, but this one is a bit more general. It's more of a description of the steps you need to take in order to make the top and put the pieces together, as opposed to how to do the steps, you know? So definitely give it a try, give it a watch. But if you have any questions, just let me know down below in the comment section. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is the fabric that I'm going to be using, and I got 2.5 yards of this, and I just wanted to point out that when you're using fabric, if you're looking for the selvage, this is what it looks like sometimes. So you want to basically match up your grain line along with this selvage line. I've traced my patterns out. You have the bra cup, you've seen I've added the seam allowance. And I wanted to show you guys that for the sleeve that I traced, I made sure to copy my notch so that I know where the back of the sleeve is and the front of the sleeve is. And what I do also with the notches is I also transfer them down at the bottom of the sleeve as well. So you see you have the double notch here at the top and at the bottom, and then the same thing with the single. And the reason why I do that is because sometimes when I fold it over to do the casing for the elastic, these notches get lost and I forget where the front of the sleeve is versus the back. So I definitely suggest transferring your notches over to the bottom. So now I'm just going to go ahead and cut out all of my patterns. Just serge the outer edge along the seam allowance line for all of the pieces. Okay, so now I have my serged piece, and what I want to do is I want to draw a line that's going straight down the middle of these 2 darts. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to fold our dart in half, and this line should be on the crease of the fold. So now you're just going to stitch a straight line on this dart leg, and it will naturally land on top of this other dart leg. And you see we have the line in the middle on the fold. So now we want to gather this bottom edge of the cups, so right here, and we're going to use a ruffle foot to do that. This is going to help to gather it and make it contour better to our breasts. There's a few other ways that you can gather the edges. So this is what your cup should look like at the end, and I've left the thread tails like pretty long because we might need to readjust the gathering once we try to pair it with the cup. So now we want to just take two of our cups and we're going to take the center front piece, and we're just going to put this aside for now. But the objective is to make sure that the wrong sides are facing up, so you can see my seam allowance lines here. And now we want to basically line up the bottom edge of the cup that is gathered with the top edge of the center front piece. And when you're putting them together, so I like to start with the very end, and you want to make sure that the seam allowance line of your cup, you can't see it because it's very light, but the seam allowance line of your cup should line up with the seam allowance line of your center front piece. So when you're done, it'll look something like this. You see on one side and then the other side. So now what you want to do is you want to take this to your machine and you're going to stitch right along that seam allowance line. Again, making sure that this seam allowance line matches the seam allowance line on the bra cup. So I'm going to repeat the same thing with the other cup. So you're literally just flipping it over and then making sure that both sides are wrong sides up, and then you just want to connect it. So we have our two pieces. I've finished hemming the bottom. You probably can't see it that well, but it is a very neat hem. We want to measure our wrist, so we're just going to take our elastic. We're not going to stretch it at all. We're going to leave it loose, and we're going to just put it over our wrist to see how much we need. I'm going to just cut a second piece that's the same length, and this will be for my other sleeve pattern. For this line here, we want to measure our bicep. We want to just take this measurement here on the screen. So just refer to your bodice block. For me, I got 9 inches, and I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of this. So right where the seam allowance line is, you're going to line up the top edge. You're going to do a zigzag stitch, and you're lightly going to pull on the elastic while you stitch. And once you do that, it'll gather the fabric. And you want to repeat the same step with the bicep elastic as well. So right along where the serging line is, I'm just going to fold over the fabric. Right? So once I fold it over, you can see like the serging is fully there. So if you didn't serge your fabric, I suggest you just fold it over about 1/4 of an inch. Pin it down and then straight stitch all around. Starting right where the side seam allowance meets the top seam allowance, so right at this point, I'm going to measure 3 inches and make a mark. And this mark is going to let me know that this is where I need to start putting my elastic. And what I want to do is I want to sew my elastic directly under this hemmed edge. So right underneath there. And I'm going to do a zigzag stitch starting at this point that we made. And while I'm zigzag stitching, I'm just going to stretch the elastic until I can't stretch it anymore. And where the elastic ends will be the midpoint of this sleeve cap. We have our mark that we made, and Where it ends is basically the midpoint of the sleeve cap. So what we want to do is we want to create a casing by folding the edge over so that it meets the seam allowance line, like so. And we're just going to pin it down, and we're going to do a straight stitch along the edge of the folded fabric. And we're going to fold this fabric all the way down, even along the area that doesn't have the elastic. And when you're stitching, you want to make sure to stretch the fabric when you get in the area where there's the elastic, and you just do the straight stitch along this area. Here you see this is the casing without the elastic. This is the back, and then here we have the elastic, and it has been cased in. I'm not sure how clear that looks, but it's been cased in all the way. And then here there's no elastic. So what we want to do now is we want to go to the back of our sleeve where the double notch is, and we want to use our gathering foot to gather starting from where the side seam allowance lines starting from that line all the way until we get to where the elastic is. We want to use our gathering foot to gather this part of the sleeve. So this is what our sleeve is looking like now that we've gathered the back part. I ended up gathering it by hand. As you can see the threads here, I ended up gathering it by hand because it was a little too thick for my machine. So now I have the front of my top, and what I want to do is I want to start from the corner where the side seam allowance connects with the top seam allowance, and I'm going to measure and mark 3 inches in. Okay, so now we want to connect these two side points together, and in order to do that, we're going to sandwich the fabric so that they're right sides facing. And then we're just going to pin along the edge. So I've connected the front part to the back part with a straight stitch here, as you can see. So this is how it's looking. So now what you want to do is you want to put your pattern so that it's right side facing up, and you're going to take your sleeve. Make sure that you have the right sleeve. The sleeve that you want to work with should have the back notch, so the double notch here, and you want to line up. And remember, this side was the side that we gathered by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the edge of this sleeve. So just right here where the side seam allowance is, I'm going to make sure not to sew this part down. So I'm going to leave about 1/2 of an inch off from the edge, and I'm going to connect it to the armhole, and I'm going to pin it down. So where the seam allowance is at the top of the back of the block, I want to match that with the section that doesn't have the elastic in it at the back of the shirt. Right where that begins, I want that part to line up with the seam allowance line. I want to make sure that my gathers are evenly distributed so that they can be sewn all along the curve. So if anything is out of line, you can always just kind of like manipulate it with your hand to just make sure the gathers are like even. Once it looks like everything's in place, then I'll just kind of pin it down, starting at the bottom of the elastic all the way down to that seam allowance line. You're going to stop there. So I left the seam allowance line here, and I've stitched the gathered part of the back of the sleeve to the back of the shirt. And this is what it's looking like. This is the front part of the sleeve that doesn't have the elastic. It's 3 inches. And then this midsection here has the elastic. This is going to go over our shoulder in the front, and then we have the back. I want to just hem the top edge of the back of the shirt. This is going to make it easier for us to connect the sleeves. I'm just going to fold over the edge, and then I'm going to do a straight stitch all the way across, and I've already started pinning it down here. So now we've hemmed down the top edge so it's flat like this. We're going to flip the piece so that it's wrong side facing up. You're going to take the wrist part of the sleeve and you're going to fold it so that it's folded in half with the right side inside of the fold. And you're just going to line up the edges. You're going to line up the seam allowance line, and you're going to pin it down. And you're going to just keep pinning the right sides together of the sleeve. And then eventually you'll get to this top part here where you see the cup and you see the end of the sleeve. So what you want to do is you want to pin the end of the sleeve to that 3-inch mark that we had made earlier at the top of the cup. So right side of the sleeve facing that notch at the very edge. And then you're going to have the remaining of the sleeve left. And you want to just kind of pin everything in place. Starting at that 3-inch mark, a straight stitch all the way down along the seam allowance line until you get all the way to the end of the sleeve where the wrist is. So this is what our sleeve is looking like now that it's connected here along the bra cup. And then we have this open space for our shoulder. And then the back is gathered. So this is what it's looking like so far. Repeat the same exact steps that we did with this sleeve. We need to repeat the same thing on this side of the pattern. We have both sleeves attached to the top. If you're not doing a lining piece, then you can leave your top as is. I'm going to take my lining piece and I'm going to put it on top of my shirt with the right sides facing. I'm going to line up that 3-inch mark to the 3-inch mark on this, like the outer shell cup. And then I'm going to make sure that the seam allowance of this lines up with the seam allowance of the outer shell cup. And I'm just going to pin it down, and I'm going to pin all the way across. And we're going to stop pinning once we get to that 3-inch mark here. So you see it lines up perfectly with the sleeve. So these flaps are fine. Just leave them as is for now. But you're going to start stitching here at this point, and you're going to do a straight stitch all across both cups, stopping at the other 3-inch point. Alright, so I finished stitching the top to the lining to my outer shell. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to take it and I'm going to flip it so that the lining is now inside. I'm going to tuck it inside, and you see this is what it's looking like. I turn the top inside out. So the side that's open like this, our zipper is going to go in here. So we're going to start on this side first, the side that doesn't have the zipper. We have the lining piece, and we have the outer shell piece, and then we have the back of the bodice. So what we want to do is we want to take the lining edge and we want to fold it over along the seam allowance line, and we're going to just rest it on top of the side edge like so, and then we're going to do a straight stitch across, and then for this piece that's here sticking up, we're going to fold that over too, and then fold that over and then stitch straight. So after you've finished sewing the lining down on this side, for this side where it's open, we want to put our zipper in. If you have a long zipper like me, you're going to start by sizing it down. I've shown this in previous tutorials, but in order to size down a zipper, you basically measure how much of the zipper you want to keep, and then you do a straight stitch back and forth, back and forth, back and forth where you want your zipper to end, and then you cut off the remaining part of the zipper that you don't want anymore, and you'll have a new size. So now let's pretend that this was sized down, and what you're going to do is you're going to open your zipper, and on one side of the zipper, you're going to sandwich it in between the lining and the outer shell. So basically, you're going to kind of sandwich it so that it's like that inside of there. And then the other part of the zipper, you're going to connect it to the back part of the shirt. So you're just going to fold it over and attach it to the zipper. And when you've done that, you'll see that the zipper is separated by the outer shell and lining, and then the back of the top. For the back part, you're going to hem it by just folding it over and then doing a straight stitch across. But then for the lining and the outer shell part, you're going to have to fold it so that it's right sides facing. So sort of like this. So like you basically put it together and then you would stitch it like that. Okay, so this is what the final top is looking like. We have the cups sewn in, we have the zipper on the side, and looking at the lining, you just turn it inside out. So we have the lining here, we have the zipper here on this side, and then yeah, that's about it. So these are the first pair of earrings that Tangi sent me. They're called the Tropical Forest earrings, and I love the 3 little birds. There is a little story to them on her website. I just really love the color and just how vibrant these earrings are. She also sent me these waist beads here. I believe they're called the Energy waist beads, and they are tie-on waist beads. And she sent me these earrings. She sent me the stud version of these earrings, but they are also available in a longer dangle style and in different colors as well. Now for the final reveal, I want you to go to your emojis and leave a comment with the 3rd emoji, because that's going to be your reaction to this top. Let me know if you guys think I did a good job. Let me know if you think it's cute. Let me know if you're going to try to make it on your own. And if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.